Appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Let's just quickly go around the room and make sure we got introductions to everybody, because there's some folks here I don't quite recognize, so that's all right. Let's start. Rosie, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Rosie Hernandez, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Jordan Chandler, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Carlton Christensen with the Utah Transit Authority.
Joe Smoka, Immigration Canyon and COG.
Rob Daly with City of Holiday.
Tammy Tran, Keysville City.
Settler, I can wait till later if you want to take a bath before your meeting.
Wayne Bidden, WFRC staff.
Braden Mitchell, Riverdale City Mayor.
You can start.
Bryce Bird, I'm the Director of the Division of Air Quality.
Natalie Hall, Bluffdale City.
Carolyn Lundberg, Linden City, and representing MAG.
Doyle Gerard representing Lake Point.
Ben Hewitt with UDOT.
Press Letter Region 1 Program Manager.
And I'm Robert Stewart. I'm the UDOT Region 2 Director.
Jim Harvey, Weber County.
Julie Bjornstad, Wasatch Front.
Devin Weeder, UDOT Project Manager.
I have my next job. Josh Vanger, UDOT.
James Esqueda, WFRC.
Hugh Van Wagen, WFRC.
And who else do we have online? We got
Kathleen Von Houten with Lake Point.
I think that's just about everybody, isn't it?
If you'd like, I can read the names.
Yeah, you know, just
We have Ben Woothridge, Kendall Draney, Kathleen Von Houten, Jim Harvey, Ken Short, Braden Mitchell, Kevin Jepson, resident Stephen Van Maren, and we have a phone number ending in 0055.
Rosie, that's Andrew. I'll be there in the room in just a moment.
Wonderful. That's all I see. Back to you, Chair.
awesome. Thank you. And I'm Mark Shepard, the chair and mayor of Clearfield City. So we first item on our agenda is the minutes from our August 17th meeting. Do we have a motion on the minutes? Or?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have an opportunity for public comment. I didn't see anybody here from the public. Was there anyone here that was here to speak this afternoon? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to turn the time over to on our chair's report to Julie Bjornstad. Thank you, Julie. Give us kind of a report on Utah's Unified Transportation Plan.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks. So back in May, WFRC adopted our 2023 to 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Shortly thereafter, the other MPOs in the state, as well as UDOT, finalized their long-range plans. Together, those long-range plans make Utah's Unified Transportation Plan. So this plan identifies active transportation roads and transit needs from now until 2050. It was a joint effort by all of the transportation agencies within the state. It also identifies information about capacity, maintenance, preservation, and operations of the entire transportation system, rather. Andrew likes to brag, he's not here, so I'll do it for him, that we're the only state in the nation that has a document like this, but it is really helpful to see all of the state's needs in one place. So if you go to unifiedplan.org, you can visit the map and learn more about the Unified Plan, but I'll just walk you through some of the key elements of the Unified Transportation Plan. So this is what the map looks like. You can navigate and look at it by different layers. So you can go via each of the planning agencies, whether that's the MPO or UDOT roads. Also look through the different modes, active transportation, highway, and transit. And then the year of financial constraint phasing. So when we're assuming revenue is available for those particular projects. And you can see it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then other needs that we're assuming have no funding available for them between now and 2050. If you zoom in, so this is MAG's area, UDOT Region 3. So you can look also by the UDOT regions, and then if you're interested, the state and house districts. And then you can click on each individual project and you'll find more information, things like obviously the name of the project, but cost, what jurisdiction, what UDOT region it's in, what county. And sometimes projects have additional comments. So for instance, this 3-gate trail up in Weber and Davis County came in through an amendment. So you can see that there was an amendment there. So sometimes there's more comments about the project.
I did renew my 50 caliber thing. I found my membership card
Okay, so
and
in
it
addition-
expired in February of the.
Okay, so that's the map. You can see that all of the needs throughout the state are on one map. This is a great place if you're looking statewide. If you're looking specifically in the Wasatch Front region, it's probably best to still come to our regional transportation plan map, but this is a great resource to share as you're talking statewide. In addition, on the website, unifiedplan.org, we have information about how the plan is funded. So you can scroll through the web pages and see that we can't fund all needs. So we go through a prioritization process, looking at needs, our financial constraints, and then, like I said, putting them into the different phasing buckets. We can also see how the system between now and 50, where the needs are, whether that's road capacity, maintenance, transit capacity, transit maintenance, or active transportation. So we have about $153 billion worth of transportation needs in the next 28 years. That's both on the capacity as well as the maintenance and operations side. But we can really we prioritize 113 million of that, meaning that's how much we expected to have available in funding. That revenue comes from existing funding sources like user fees, local option sales taxes, federal funding, and then legislative appropriations. But we also assume new funding between now and 50. These are additional local option sales taxes, increases, and user fees. And yet still we need, so that's the 18.4 billion is our sort of a planned assumed new revenue. We're assuming that there'll be new authorizations for local option sales taxes, but we still need about $40 billion over the next 28 years to fund, maintain, and build new transportation capacity. On this page, you can also see how that breaks down between state roads, local roads, transit, and active transportation. And then you can kind of see on a given year what the funding sources look like for each one of those either modes or ownership types. So that's about funding. We also on the website have some of the benefits for the plan, which includes better mobility, good health, connected communities, and a strong economy that lines up with the U Vision goals and benefits, if you've heard of that. It's also what goes into the TIF and TTIF prioritization models. And so you can go scroll through the website for each one of those benefits and get more information. So this one's strong economy, and you can see that here we have the economic impact created by the investments listed in the unified plan. That's about $247 billion on our GDP, and about 270,000 new jobs are created from our transportation system. You can see that our access to opportunities, meaning our access to jobs and other educational opportunities, increases given the plan. And then that this continues even though our population is increasing. So each one of the goals has more information about it. We also have these stories of Utahns from throughout the state and how the transportation system impacts their quality of life. So that's all contained here on the Utah's Unified Transportation Plan. Our portion of that, WFRC's portion, is the Wasatch Choice Vision, and we are hosting our annual workshops this fall right now. We've already had 3 to date, so I know I've seen some of you there. We've had Southern Salt Lake County, Southern Davis, and then Southern Weber and Northern Davis was just last night. We have two more, so I encourage you that if we haven't come to your area already, Box Elder and Northern Weber is November 13th, so next Monday in Far West at the Senior Center. And then Northern Salt Lake County is November 20th and Murray City Hall. So at these workshops, we're talking about implementation. We're doing a mapping exercise about the Utah Trail Network and family-friendly bikeways, and reviewing some of the information that's coming out of Guiding Our Growth and seeking feedback from you on how that process can continue to be implemented. So that's it, Mayor. Okay. Does
Thank you,
anyone have any
Julie.
questions
Any
about the
questions?
workshops? The unified plan? Okay.
If I may, I'll just add that, the focus of Transcom is short-range planning and programming, and Julie's just given us an overview of the statewide long-range plan. One of the key ties between the short-range planning and the long-range planning is that in order for any major roadway or transit project to be added to the short 6-year transportation improvement program, it first has to be identified in the Utah's Unified Transportation Plan, or in the regional transportation plan for the given MPO area. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Julie. All right, well, that brings us to our next item, which is our transportation improvement program. And Ben is online, and he's going to walk us through our items A and B. So, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry I'm not there with y'all in person, but grateful that I'm able to be accommodated here with Rosie and Jordan and Wayne. Thanks. So today,
Ben, you muted yourself.
You still there, Ben?
I am still here. Here I am now.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Yes, thank you. So, Mr. Chair, in an effort as we review today 2 items in the Transportation Improvement Program, last time we had a discussion, well, they're shot by so fast. I tried to do an origami in the bridge, but as you can see, all I could figure out was a bird. So we'll work on that for future reference. But the Transportation Improvement Program, as you're aware, implements the long-range plans for the highway transit and active transportation projects. So those projects that were referenced there from Wayne and from Julie's presentation. The TIP also helps us meet the short-range needs along the Wasatch Front, and it provides for the maintenance of our existing system. So today there are 2 items before you. The first one is to report on an approved board modification from the Regional Council's meeting back in October. And the second one is for an approval of the new board modification that comes before Transcom today. So the board modification that the Regional Council looked at back in October, there were 3 pages that identified projects that the Regional Council reviewed and approved. And that signed resolution is also part of your meeting materials today. Were there any questions on any of those projects? If not, if it's all right, Mr. Chair, I'll just proceed on with the board modification for Transcom today.
You are good to go, Ben. Thanks.
Thank you. So in our meeting materials today, we have 2 papers that are attached to a resolution. Each one of these tables identifies the projects that are before Transcom today for your review and approval. We'll go through each one in kind of a quick manner, and if there's any comment or questions, we would please speak up and we'll move forward. So the first one here, well, I was moving right along without any introduction. This is in the Big Cottonwood Canyon. This is an environmental study necessary for the tolling in Big Cottonwood Canyon. As you'll recall, There was a board modification before Transcom that approved funding for bus enhancements as well as bus stop improvements in the facilities there in the canyons, as well as a mobility hub and tolling facilities. That board modification was approved, but in order to look at and consider the tolling facility here in the Big Cottonwood Canyon, an environmental document needs to take place first. So UDOT is requesting that we approve a new project, which would be the environmental study for the tolling facilities in Big Cottonwood Canyon. This project would be an amount of $2 million, and that funding comes from the State Transportation Investment Fund's Recreational Hotspot program. The next project before us is a project. I gotta change my view because all of your awesome pictures are hiding all of my. There we go. The next project that we have to look at is a project. This is up in Davis County. This is on 650 North. Southbound ramps. This is an interchange area there in Davis County, just west of Hillfield Road. So the intent of this, boy, this shoots through everything too fast. So you can see the dual left turn movements that come off of SR 126 or 1900 West. And then they all jockey for position to use that right turn lane to move onto the freeway going south. The intent of this project is to construct dual right turn lanes on 650 North onto I-15 so that we can utilize both left turning movements off of 126 on the I-15, reduce that weaving pattern, and reduce the congestion in that area. This project is a new project. The department's asking that we program $600,000, and these funds are coming from the Region 1 Transportation Solutions Program. The next project before Transcom today is a project in Weber County. This is a project that, yes.
Hey, this is Brett. So we have an updated estimate. So we have an updated estimate on that project. It is 1.2 million.
Oh, good. All right, Brett, thanks.
Can I ask you a question real quick on that one?
Yes.
Just as to the viability of it, I think more than anything, knowing that those two turn lanes now can both follow on, does that back us up more? Part of the biggest issue there is the crossing of the lanes, going from the northbound, crossing over those the lanes that are there and trying to get into the northbound on-ramp.
So actually what we're seeing is we're not getting full utilization of the two left turn lanes on 126.
Right.
So folks will not, even in that picture, you can see that most of the cars are in the outside lane.
Mm-hmm.
What we're putting in is a right through. So because of space and trying to squeeze this into this project and the canal right there, that where that pink line is that Ben has drawn, that is going to be a right through right turn lane. So no, you should not see any weaving. All we're going to get is better utilization. So now folks will realize that they can be in both lanes to either go continue on to the base or to get on the freeway.
Okay. Thanks.
So this is a interim project. This intersection is high on our ranking for intersection modification. I think it's being ranked as number 8. So at some future point, we'll address this intersection and do something completely different at this interchange.
That was my question. It's just the flow of the traffic. And then obviously, Rob and I have talked about the long range plan on that intersection or on the interchange itself.
That's correct.
As we're about to add 4,000 jobs to that intersection.
Yep.
So, okay.
Thank you, Brett. And Ben, so
yes,
just to clarify, so if I understand Brett correctly, I think it would be appropriate that We identify this as a $1.2 million project for the record, rather than 600, unless anybody has concerns with doing that.
Nope, it would be kind of silly to approve it at a different amount. So that would make sense.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Wayne. I did make a note on my tables. You have the resolution there to sign, and we'll change the tables to the resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving on to the next project then is a project that is up in Weber County. This particular project is in South Ogden. It's on 300 West between Riverdale Road to Washington Boulevard. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with, this is a single direction facility. So there's two couplets that come together to get the movements of the traffic. When this project was first reviewed and approved by the Transcom here, it was recommended that this project receive $4 million of the requested $4.4 million. And the city felt pretty confident that they could go back and make things work out and they would go to work. Well, as time's gone on, as you know, this was back in 2017, some things have changed, some things have, well, in a result of additional project cost, it was identified in the plan in hand that this project now would cost almost twice as much. So rather than put the project on hold while additional funding was being identified, it was discussed and reviewed and recommended by the project sponsor, requested from the project sponsor that we look at a different strategy. And that strategy would be perhaps we divide the project into two facilities or two phases, enabling us to move forward with the one phase and to be able then to go after and find funding for the second phase. So this request is will complete all of the project design for both phases. So we've got the 40th Street and we got the Chimes View routes. Chimes View route is the route to the top, and 40th Street is the lower route. But this request would also acquire all the right-of-way for both phases. And then it would reconstruct with the minor widening on phase one, which would be Chimes View, which would essentially go from Riverdale Road to the Country Club Drive, which is right there where the Y begins. So this request is to change the scope of the project, to divide the project in half into two phases, reconstruct Chimes View, complete all the project design, and acquire all of the right-of-way. Also, in addition, to be able to accomplish this task, it's requested that an additional $200,000 be programmed on the project, thus giving us a total project cost for phase one at $4.9+ million. Any questions on this project? We will probably see phase two coming through the next processes as the city or the project sponsor works on utilizing and going after various funds from the county as well as from WFRC. That brings us to the next table, which identifies the next three projects for this board modification. The first project is a project in Kaysville City. This is on SR 273 or the main street in Kaysville. This project initially was identified to do a 2-inch remove and replace of the existing asphalt on this facility to prolong the life of the structure or the facility. However, during the design and preparation, it was identified that the pavement on this structure over US 89, that there was potholing and there was a need for a surface treatment for this particular structure. So this project has a request for a change in scope as well as additional funds. The change in scope would be that in addition to the 2-inch of roadway surface replacement, that the potholing patching and a micro surfacing be conducted on the structure over US 89 there on SR 273 or Kaysville Main Street. That requested amount for additional funds is $1.1 million, giving us a total project estimated cost of $6,090,000. The next request that's before us is a project in Weber County. This is a project in Washington Terrace on 300 West. This project is 300 West from 50th South to Riverdale Road. This project is a reconstruct with minor widening with improvements to the shoulder, curb, gutter, and sidewalk where necessary. Since the time that this project was programmed, costs have inflated as well as the need for getting my notes mixed up here, but there was a number of pedestrian ramps that needed to be replaced, as well as the materials and the labor on the project. The request from the city, this was recommended at $2.7 million from Transcom when this project was approved. The request is for an additional $215,000. Now, currently, right now, the estimated increase for this project is a lot more than that. But the Washington Terrace is working with the department in finding and strategizing ways in which to reduce the cost here as they prepare for advertising on this project. So they are intending to cover the shortfall. Right now, worst case scenario would be a shortfall of $535,000 coming from the local government. But there is a strong possibility that amount will reduce. But the request before us at this time is an additional $215,000 of STP funds. Our last project to review is a project in Davis County. This is a project in Woods Cross. This is a project on 800 West and 1500 South. This is a project that will improve this intersection by implementing or bringing in a structure as well as singling out or removing the turning movements from the through movements. This project has also been, when it was recommended by this committee, it was recommended for the full requested amount of $984,000 plus, but there was some additional right-of-way necessary as well as some improvements. So they are requesting an additional $250,000 for this project. And that gives us a total project value of $1.3+ million. And that is the last project in this request for a board modification to the TIP.
Very good. Thank you, Ben. Any questions for Ben before we take action on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could get a little bit more or just be educated a little bit more on the $2 million EIS modification for Big Cottonwood Canyon. That is just to study the tolling piece in Big Cottonwood Canyon. Is that right?
What I understand, is that correct? Oh, yeah, we'll have UDOT explain that one.
Yeah, so that project is for the tolling, as was indicated in the Little Cottonwood EIS. Recommended we look at the impact that tolling Little Cottonwood would have on Big. And then if we want to implement tolling, we need to look at the environmental justice impacts of tolling. It's not just like, seeing how we toll. It's also seeing like what we need to do because of tolling, how we continue to maintain mobility up the canyon and not like restrict certain groups. So it is just a study for that. Does that answer your question?
Well, it answers my question, but it costs $2 million to figure that out.
So it is an environmental assessment, and that is the average cost of what we see for like an environmental assessment of that size, because it is about 12 to 18 months. And we while we would hope it would be lower or easier, we expect a lot of comments.
So
And
this is part of the phase one implementation of movement up both canyons. So is this same study been done in Little Cottonwood Canyon?
Yeah, so that was part of the Little Cottonwood Canyon EIS. This is just, we're not trying to recreate the whole Little Cottonwood Canyon EIS. We're just doing one section of that in big.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only comment is, and that EIS was $13 million, something
Roughly,
like that.
yeah.
So we're gonna spend $15 million to figure out what the tolling impacts are gonna be in Big Cottonwood Canyon. Isn't that information that was gleaned from the what's the difference between the impacts of tolling in Little Cottonwood Canyon and Big Cottonwood Canyon? I guess that would be my question.
And I think I want to add to your question, wasn't there an environmental study done when this was put into the plan? Don't we have an environmental study?
No, so this is a new study.
We've never done an environmental study on Big Cottonwood Canyon.
Not
ever.
Not for tolling.
Wait. So can you help explain why we need a different environmental study for tolling versus anything else?
We have not done any study in Big Cottonwood Canyon of this type, like to look at mobility up the canyon or anything like that recently. We did Little Cottonwood Canyon, but that was strictly for Little Cottonwood Canyon.
So let me just keep going here a little bit. So this is just relating to the impacts that tolling is going to have in Big Cottonwood Canyon. So what about the other pieces of the phase one implementation we're talking about, which is it like bus rapid transit? So is that going to be a separate environmental study?
No, that would be included, but we're looking at toll. So, you know, the way NEPA works is you say your impact is tolling, and then we look at what the, alternatives will be to mitigate tolling. And so that's where the busing and that comes in, is as the alternative. So this would, evaluate what kind of bus service would be needed, what kind of, if there needs to be a mobility hub, stuff like that. So that's like, it's not just saying, how do you implement tolling? It's how do you mitigate the effects of tolling?
So based on the information you extract from this EIS study, you may or may not implement tolling based off of the information that's produced through that EIS study? Or is that just foregone that we're going to have tolling?
So yeah, the point of this is to implement tolling, and then the mitigation is how to, we figure out how we mitigate the impact of tolling.
It just seems like an incredible, I mean, to me, $2 million is a lot of money to have somebody tell you what the impacts of tolling are going to be. That just seems, and especially after we've just spent $13 million in Little Cottonwood Canyon on an environmental impact study. The canyons are essentially similar. Why do we have to spend an additional $2 million to tell us what we probably are? Shouldn't we already know what that information is from the Little Cottonwood Canyon EIS?
Yeah, and that's part of the NEPA process, is like, it wasn't defined as part of the Little Cottonwood study. So we do have to do the study again. We can take a lot of the technical information, right? We can go and say, okay, a lot of this technical information also applies to big, but a lot of the cost we're seeing is going to be public involvement and handling the comments that we're going to get. So this isn't a lump sum contract, right? Like when I put this out to a consultant, it will be a per hour contract or like cost contract. So it doesn't have to be $2 million. That's just what we're estimating it would cost.
So you'll put out an RFP, and based on the submissions you get, it may be, you may contract with somebody that's going to be less money.
Yes.
I think my whole point is $2 million to me is a lot of money, taxpayer money that we could be spending on other transportation items that to me would be higher priority to figure out what the impacts of a tolling booth are going to be. But I'm sure it's some kind of requirement that we probably have from the federal government that we have to do this before we go through any kind of implementation.
You can't implement tolls without an environmental impact study.
We cannot. Due to the environmental, like basically we're saying, if we put a toll in, what happens to the population who cannot afford that toll? How do we get that population up the canyon? So this is
They can't afford to ski anyways, trust me.
Well,
$200
and that's why we're
a-
looking to provide a low cost alternative, right? Like busing or lower no cost alternative, for all the college kids like I was who couldn't afford $20 every time they went up, but could afford to get to the canyon.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead,
Can
Andrew.
can I build on this just a little bit? And I know trustee Christensen wants to comment as well. Just to be clear, two things. One, there has been significant community input and desire to address transportation challenges in Big Cottonwood Canyon. So we all know that. And there was extensive work, as we also all know, done with regard to Little Cottonwood Canyon, as you're noting, Mayor. And some work has been done. There has been some planning level work done for Big Cottonwood Canyon, but not the, and this is what I'm leading to a question, okay, not the required under federal law, under the National Environmental Policy Act, not the required level of full analysis to be able to evaluate the alternatives for Big Cottonwood Canyon and then be able to proceed with whatever the EIS process leads to. So part of what's happening here is in order to implement solutions which are consistent with the general phase 1 preferences that have been broadly supported, in order to move forward and do some of those things in Big Cottonwood Canyon, it is required under federal law that we do this environmental assessment. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And in order to do that environmental assessment, there are certain procedural requirements, including significant opportunity for public input, that we have to follow in order to move forward on any of these and on any of this work. And those are costly. The required procedures from the federal government are costly. They are time consuming and they are costly. Whatever you think about whether it's the right process or not the right process is not really the point here. It's the required process in order to reach desired outcomes and make enhancements to service in Big Cottonwood Canyon. So what I understand about this is that UDOT is saying, if we want to make any improvements in Big Cottonwood Canyon, which may or may not include tolling, I mean, officially, they have to evaluate all the alternatives fully and get public input into them. They have to do this environmental assessment process, which has a cost to it, which is a not insignificant cost. And what you're saying is this, as of right now, is a placeholder dollar value, and it may come in less than that. Conceivably, it could come in more than that, depending on the nature of the process. But is that all correct?
That's all correct. I think 2 million is we're hoping for an environmental assessment, not an EIS, just for the scope. So if it's an EA, $2 million is a very good estimate and should not exceed that amount.
The distinction there is there are various parameters in federal law of what level of process is required. And part of the initial steps is determining what level of process. So you're saying it could actually ultimately end up being that a full environmental impact statement is needed. We don't know that yet. As of right now, we're assuming it will be just an environmental assessment, correct?
That's correct. We will first have to do the class of action determination. That's the first step after selecting a consultant.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I know. Thank you.
No, you're good.
It's helpful, but I know.
Kurt.
The only thing I was going to add, Mayor Dolly, is that is not an unusual amount. I decided I'm in the wrong business a long time ago, but it is also an important step, and they're not insignificant documents. It's not like it's a small pamphlet that has a couple thoughts in it. They are pretty extensive documents, and you never know if you're going to get litigated afterwards, and so. They are documents that you prepare to say that you actually looked at all the issues that could be raised. So they're pretty extensive, and they often sometimes will go more, especially on the larger projects, and so it's not out of it is a lot of money, but it's not out of character for what those require.
Thanks. That makes me feel way better about that money we're spending.
just be grateful that your typical road maintenance and holiday doesn't require an environmental impact statement. So,
Commissioner Harvey, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to point out, I understand with what Mayor Dolly said there. I thought that was you, Rob. That seems like an incredible amount of money when you use an example of the Adams Avenue Parkway in Weber County, a toll road that's been in existence for 23 years. It crosses environmentally sensitive land and it crosses a blue ribbon fish river as well. So I'd like them to, whoever gets this, to take a look at that example, because actually I'm kind of a pro toll road guy. The users pay, and if they need to go around, and you can go around in either one of those, takes a lot longer, but I'm for that. That seems like a good alternative. But $2 million, I'd like to bid on this. I can do it for half and I'll have it done in an afternoon. So appreciate it.
Thanks.
Just if I might, for the
Yeah.
record, note that we are not anticipating Commissioner Harvey to bid on this project, just for the record.
Nor does Jim have the qualifications to complete this project.
Fair enough. And just if I might, I hope this is appropriate. I know UDOT is requesting and recommending approval. WFRC staff is also recommending approval of this so that the work can go forward and evaluate the best approaches for traffic and transportation in Big Cottonwood Canyon, with the understanding of the frustrations about the costs.
Okay, just one more question, then usually I say I'll shut up, but then I usually continue on. But, so will this be the same process as the EIS in Little Cottonwood Canyon, where UDOT basically, will this go out for public comment?
Yeah, I believe the EA process has one public comment at minimum. And it's about a 12 to 18 month process. So yeah, there will be public comment, but it's not a full environmental impact statement. So it won't have as many public comment periods.
So and then UDOT will come back and recommend it based on that EIS, the conclusions. Will that have to be then accepted into the RTP for WFRC, or is this a different process than what we just went through with the phase 1, 2, and 3, phase 3, including the gondola?
So I believe phase 1, the money that was allocated, I believe you guys have approved the phase 1 funding. That money also includes most of it for Big Cottonwood, actually.
Right. The regional transportation plan that was approved in May includes these improvements: tolling, enhanced bus, mobility hub, and resort bus stops in both Big and Little Cottonwood
So
Canyons.
then I guess the simple part of it is whatever UDOT recommends, is it going to be similar to the process we went through in Little Cottonwood Canyon, where we basically were told, look, this isn't something where you can pick and choose what UDOT recommends. You can't bifurcate, say, the gondola to phase 3, or is this a different process where you're just going to go through this EIS and come back and say, here's the recommendation to Transcom WFRC? Is it different?
Right. And so at this point, the difference here is that these projects, these phase 1 projects for both canyons have already been included.
Gotcha. They're in the RTP, so it's a
and-
different, okay.
And they're also in the tip.
Okay, that
already.
answers my question. Thank
Okay,
you all.
you bet.
Now I'll shut up.
Well, thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions for Ben? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion then to approve these these modifications to the 24-29 tip.
Mr. Chair, so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. Well, we'll move on. Item number 5, we're going to have reports today from Utah Transit Authority and UDOT. And some updates. So I'm going to turn the time over to Trustee Christensen, and then I'm going to have you guys, instead of me introducing you, if you would just kind of introduce yourselves and tell us what you do and who you are and why and where you came from, and something. No, I'm just kidding. You're just Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name's Carlton Christensen. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees for the Utah Transit Authority. And just as a reminder, I have 2 colleagues that make up our board. We're recommended by the respective county commissioners, and as well, or in my case, county mayor, or the council of governments in those counties that we represent. And so I have the privilege of representing Salt Lake County, and my colleague Beth Holbrook has Davis, Weber, and Box Elder County, and my colleague Jeff Acerson has Utah and Tooele counties. And then those recommendations are made to the governor, and he appoints both the board and as well as the chair. So I have that privilege as well. We are a special service district, and we serve 80 different cities and 6 different counties. We're actually one of the larger geographical transit districts in America, and in an unusual way, we're a fully integrated transit system. In a lot of metropolitan areas, you would have to basically transfer from one system to the other when you got to a county line or edge of a city, and you might even have to transfer from a bus provider to a commuter rail provider. And so our model is a little bit unique, but it has some efficiencies also associated with that, including in scheduling. Earlier this year, we adopted a strategic plan, and in our budgeting, our group has very detailed goals associated with their budget for the implementation of this strategic plan. And just to give a couple examples, we're actually in cooperation with our planning agencies. UTA is paying for more extensive economic analysis that we've added on to the consultant doing the work for the Unified Transportation Plan to talk about the economic return of transit to the broader community, well beyond just the service that we provide, but the economic investment that often follows transit and the quality of life. Our goal by 2030 is to be within 70%, a half mile of 70% of the state's population. Just as a reminder, we're 80% of the state's population is in our service area. And so we know that there are some challenges there, but we also know that there's a pathway in order to get there. This just gives you some very high level objectives to that we're trying to do. Also, we're working to improve our effects on the environment and looking at ways to improve our facilities and as well as how we operate. And then in customer service, we're looking at some extensive, you'll see in some of our capital budgets, some customer service components to our service that will help improve how we serve our customers. And then like many of you, figuring out more effective ways of strengthening our workforce, both in an educational way as well as compensation, but also other opportunities to have them feel valued and be part of it. I think I'm certainly not Natalie Gochner or a profound economist like that, but I think we're into a very long haul of low unemployment. And so the challenges associated with low unemployment are going to be difficult for quite some time. And being able to maintain our workforce is an important part to us being able to provide our services. We do want you to be a stakeholder and an advocate for us. We hope we want to earn that respect. This just gives some highlights of how our agency is working to achieve some of these budget goals, and what you'll find as I go through the capital budget, that a lot of we have a very heavy investment in our state of good repair or maintaining our system. Much of our system is approaching 20 years from when it was constructed, and it requires some extensive improvements as well as some improvements to the system itself. Just as an overview and as a reminder, most of our money comes from local option sales tax imposed by counties. We do have some federal formula funds. We do get some money on discretionary grants, and then some come from fares itself. But roughly a little over 415 million is our base budget, and then with some additions and some adjustments for 2023, a final budget of 424 million on our operating side of our budget. This just gives a general overview of those costs. I would know a couple components to this. One that we're just experiencing now, and you'll see it labeled fuel and power, but a number of our bus fleet is transitioning to electric bus. And so obviously you don't need diesel for that, but you do need electricity. We're figuring out how to charge those vehicles in an appropriate way. If you ever are familiar with demand metering and electricity, if you plug one of those buses in and try to charge them up with a quick charge, you actually pay a lot more for the electricity. And so just the timing and the sequencing of how you charge those electric buses is an important part. We're learning a lot from that. The bulk of our cost in operating are wages. We are one of the top 50 employers in the state. We have 2,700 employees, and so all of those come into play. We've had some challenges in parts and just getting access to them, but I think we've worked through most of the supply chain issues that many of us have been challenged with. This just gives a breakout within our area. Just as we don't make this much money when you see board office. Our board office also includes internal audit. It includes government relations. We have also some support staff that helps in not only our meetings, but that of the local advisory council. And so this just gives you a general overview of our expenses by area. As I mentioned on the, well, I mentioned we had about 2,700 employees. We have a number of part-time employees. So the way we track FTE, you could have 2 half-time FTEs would be 1 FTE. And so there would, so when it says 2,800, there's obviously a few more positions than there actually are people that we would do that. But as you look at that, the bulk of our employees are in our operations. About 80% of our employees are in how we provide service every day. A couple goals in our 5-year capital plan. A few years ago, we, in order to better time the needs for cash to the work being done, we went to a 5-year capital planning scenario that helps us be more strategic from one year to the next, but gives our capital development folks some consistency in how to plan for that. Again, maintaining our system as a safe system, leveraging fund opportunities with federal grants, and also aligning our capital plans with our strategic goals was an important component to how we looked at this year's budget. This is just our capital budget for next year is anticipated to be 230 million. So if you take the 424 million plus the 230 million, it puts us around 750 million or so. I might be off a little bit on my math, but for our 2024 budget. And one of the, as you look at finance, you'll say, well, that's a lot of money for finance area, but our affairs area falls into to finance. And you might remember the discussion in the last legislative session about zero fares. And one of the components to that was if there's not a zero fare scenario, then UTA was at the end of its life for its fare system. And so we're in the process of acquiring that fare system. So you'll see some pretty substantial dollars there. Most of the money anticipated is in our capital development side, and those are both state of good repair as well as some new service. I just thought I would go through some of the larger capital projects that are over $1 million. I won't go through these too closely, but one of our immediate focuses, and we're working under the guidance and oversight of UDOT on this particular one, the Mid-Valley Bus Rapid Transit, because there are state funds, and it's also has a fixed guideway component to it. We're actually in the process of securing a contractor, and we anticipate doing some utility work early in 2024. And the president recommended a sizable $60 million grant in his budget. Obviously, we're waiting for Congress to figure out finances and how that will play itself out, but we're hopeful and optimistic that we can continue to move forward. We're going to also continue to work forward on the extension of the S line up to Highland Drive, and that will that work is under design right now. There's an anticipated platform anticipated in the extension of the not the extension of the red line, but in the red line in the Daybreak downtown area that will help support the work that is being done there. That was always anticipated. It was in our agreements with Rio Tinto back when Daybreak was developed. It's at their cost or at least at their obligation. And then just another big sizable commitment is the replacement of our 40 of our oldest light rail vehicles, the ones that were acquired when our light rail, you see them primarily on the blue line that goes out to Draper. Those vehicles are approaching their end of their useful life. They also are not level boarding, so if somebody has a disability, the driver or operator has to get out, let them in, and then start up. And we were very fortunate to get a $60 million grant from the Federal Transit Administration. We've set some funds aside. That gets us about half of our vehicles, but we'll be out in procurement by the end of the year with an option for all 40 of those vehicles. You'll see in here a number of train system controls, the fare system that I mentioned, as well as a lot of track work and updating. A lot of our power substation units are old and antiquated. They don't necessarily talk to us automatically. And so a lot of upgrading and safety, as well as working with UDOT on some signal priority projects that help us in our bus system to have our buses perform at better time schedules. Oops. We're currently out. The board has adopted a tentative budget. We're currently out for comment. You should have, as a community, received a copy of that budget. We're, asking for an affirmation and certainly welcome any feedback. We will go to our local advisory council at the end of this month, and then the board would tentatively look at adopting it in December, and because we're on a calendar year basis. So I think with that, that's probably my last slide. But are there questions? And
how are you? But you had a lot of one-time monies coming in for a while with ARPA and so forth.
Yeah.
How are you budgeting past that now?
Sure. So the first thing we didn't do is count on them for daily operations. When I was first appointed, actually 5 years ago, November 1st was my anniversary date of 2018. Our reserve funds were not in a great shape. If you had looked at our reserve funds and you looked at our 5-year cash flow, we about now would have been in a really pickle, to be honest. And what it enabled us to do is avoid about $120 million in bonding about 2 years ago. And then we all experienced incredible sales tax for a couple of years. And so the combination of those allowed us to pay for things with cash. And then it has enabled us to, we used them for the appropriate person, but it enabled us not to draw on our sales tax dollars. And now I would say our reserve funds are where they should be, that if we had a downturn in the economy or some reason we could continue service, even if we weren't having enough sales tax for a short period of time, we wouldn't have to cut service. And so I would say and that actually has been manifest in our bond rating. When I started, our debt was about 25% of our revenue. And now it's, this year it's about 21% of our revenue. We still have $2 billion in debt, but I've, since I came in 2018, we've refinanced about $1 billion worth of debt to lower our cost. In fact, we just did a bond tendering a couple months ago that was very favorable. And the rating agencies reaffirmed an improved credit rating from about a year and a half ago, and reaffirmed that rating, even though a lot of our sister agencies around the US have kind of tenuous, because they're more fare dependent for starters, and transit in general has taken a little bit of hit in rating, and we only have sales tax to rely on. We don't have any property tax, so they look at it only as a fairly fluctuating revenue. So that's probably a longer answer than you were looking for, but.
No, that's great. I mean, that's good to hear. So
Yeah, I think, we're thoughtfully going forward with new service. We want to make sure we can pay for what we have, and that we have and so you'll see some incremental. There's obviously some county local option sales tax that haven't been enacted yet, with the exception of Utah County. Utah County enacted theirs earlier this year. And so those hopefully will allow some additional service as well as the operation of that service. So we're hopeful about the others. We're not counting it in our 5-year projection, but if it comes, there's some, due to the regional transportation plan, there's definitely some options there.
very good. Any other questions? Andrew? Yes.
Carlton, thank you so much for giving this overview to Transcom. I have 2 questions for you, one substantive, one process.
Okay.
The substantive question, we've heard around the country post-COVID, changing travel patterns, and transit ridership declined during the pandemic, and then has come back at varying rates around the country. And this is a leading question because I know the answer to this question, but how is UTA doing in terms of return to ridership relative to other places in the country? Hint, better. And one of the reasons I know that this is because our population, we are over the past decade, we're the fastest growing population in the nation, and many downtowns around the metro centers around the country have seen post-pandemic fewer people coming downtown, and the Salt Lake, Central Business District here actually has more people in it now post-pandemic. So I'm just in that broader context of growth and travel. How is UTA doing, and how is UTA looking at this issue?
Well, every year over year, our ridership has continued to actually grow. And we'll see if this holds true, but in September and in October, our ridership was actually equal to what it was in 2019, which is almost unheard of nationally. And even in the year that, like in 21 or so, our bus ridership had come back 80% of pre-pandemic levels. It tells you, our commuter rail and light rail tend to be more commuter-based populations. Buses tends to be, while there's definitely commuters in there, it tends to carry the nuts and bolts of our community that provide jobs. And that one always stayed strong. Even in July and August, commuter rail was still 70% of 2019 numbers, which if you looked at like California or some of those other areas, they're still only in the 50 to 60% range. And so we're in the process of demonstrating high ridership for commuter rail with working under UDOT with the Federal Transit Administration. So if you get an opportunity to go out and ride Front Runner, we'd encourage you to do so in the next month or two, but it's really strong. And while definitely commuting patterns have changed, our average rider is 34 years and younger, and they're riding at an ever increasing rate. We recently began a PASS program with the Salt Lake City School District. Their ridership for their faculty and students is up 400% over a year prior. And even during the summer when they didn't have school, those pass holders in that students in that district, we still had 62,000 riders who used our system during the months of July and August. And so I think it's reflective of where that generation is going and that mindset. And so as we're looking at it, we should definitely look at it long-term regardless of the community.
And speaking of the OGX, the new bus rapid transit that just opened recently and connecting downtown Ogden, well, the front runner to downtown Ogden to Weber State University and McKay Hospital, as I understand, is packed with students.
Yeah, one of you guys probably know the real number. I want to say it's around 3,000 or 3,200 was the estimate.
Yeah.
It's been carrying about 6,400.
Wow, that's great. And Commissioner Harvey gives a thumbs up on that one. I'll just say that
they've been very full and working really well. And it's, we're seeing all of our major universities, and this Mid-Valley BRT that's going to be constructed takes the last higher education location and connects them with more frequent service with the community college there in Taylorsville.
Thank Carlton. The reason I wanted to draw that out a little bit is, Julie was presenting that on Utah's Unified Transportation Plan before. We're about to hear from UDOT also about upcoming projects. And one of the themes, any of you that do anything with WFRC, you know that one of our themes is providing transportation choices. That given that we're growing so fast, given that we have limited land, all of the transportation agencies in Utah, not just UTA and WFRC and MAG, but also UDOT, know that we have to provide choices to people to drive, to take transit, to bike, to walk. That's the heart of Utah's Unified Transportation Plan, that strategy of giving transportation choices. So it's just, I think, really important that we continue that multimodal impact. And I see Julie standing up we're going to hand out, which we didn't do before, these little trifolds about Utah's Unified Transportation Plan, so you can dig into it a little more. And I know it was dropped into the chat earlier.
And Mayor Shipper, one other thing I should probably point out that wasn't in this budget presentation, but due to state statute, those projects of fixed guideway fall under both the design and construction of UDOT. So the amount of money invested and anticipated for Front Runner, Point of the Mountain, those aren't on our books. We're definitely some of it, very little bit of it is. The bulk of it is in their capital budget. We're working very closely with them. They've been great partners. They know we're going to operate it when it's done. And so we've been working to make sure we're asking for the right product with the right design. But those construction dollars themselves are really, they're not in the budget that you see here.
Now, thank you. My brief process question, and I'm asking you this because some local elected officials have asked me this question. When you send out the budget, as you said earlier, you asked for an affirmation.
There's a form they need to fill and sign.
Right, which is an indication that they've received it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and that's required by state statute of us. And so I think it's unique to UTA, but it was part of the 2018 legislation. So we solicit those. It makes it easier on our staff if you actually sign them and return them. Otherwise, we knock on your door and ask.
Very good. Thank you, Carlton. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have one quick question. If voters approve of a local option sales tax in which UTA shares in some of those revenues, does UTA make sure that whatever's collected from that locality, those funds go directly back to that locality?
It depends on the nature of the local option sales tax. So because so much of our system is regional in its nature, they're not necessarily segregated to that area, but we take that into account in how we utilize those funds. The reality of it is, if you looked at our overall dollar amount, 60% of our revenue comes from Salt Lake County. And so we don't always produce 60% of the ridership or use in Salt Lake County. But we do an equity analysis to make sure that we're trying to balance that. But as far as being restricted, for example, on the 5th to Utah County, it wouldn't necessarily be restricted, but we would take that into account. And we know between the regional transportation plan and our local transit plan, it's definitely goes there. It just isn't accounted for dollar for dollar.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions before he sits down? Okay, you're good. Thanks. Okay, well, then we've got two reports from UDOT. The first is Tiffany Pocock, who's online with us. Tiffany, we're going to go ahead and turn the time over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tiffany Pocock. I am the Program Development Director at UDOT. Thank you for having me this afternoon. Do you want me to go ahead and share my screen, or is that going to like work for you on a tech basis? I'm happy to do either.
Yes, if you can go ahead and share your screen, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Let me know when you guys can see that.
We can see it. You're good.
Okay. So I planned on just coming to our UDOT prioritization website today. That way, if you guys have any questions in the future, or you know, we're available obviously, but if you do want to maybe later tonight when you're thinking about project prioritization, you can come to our website and dig in. We've got a lot of great content on there. Ben asked me to come today to chat with you about project prioritization, so I will kind of back a couple steps up and go over what that is. The Transportation Commission uses the prioritization ranked list for informational purposes when they fund projects. And I'll even back up a couple steps more. So Utah puts together a unified transportation plan with WFRC and the other MPOs, locals, UDOT, UTA. We all put together a transportation plan. From there, based off of different funding opportunities, UDOT will rank or prioritize phase 1 projects for, again, information to the Utah Transportation Commission to better inform them on which projects might, you know, be better equipped to account for UDOT's mission, which is to improve quality of life through transportation. So before I kind of jump into the website, if you guys have any questions about that in kind of a general, this is project prioritization. And then I'm happy to kind of walk through the tool that we have online to, you know, look at lists or, again, just a brief overview or reminder about how UDOT looks at projects for funding. And I will, so Ben Hewitt is also in the room. I might phone a friend or two if if any questions, you know, technically come up. So.
Okay, I think you're good to go.
Okay, so project prioritization. Say that 10 times fast. .udot.utah.gov. Here on the home page, we have kind of, you know, the high level what prioritization is. We do have as I mentioned, the different funding types, TIF active, T-TIF, first mile, last mile, TIF highway, and T-TIF transit. You can click on any of these and see the list. We are actually going through the ranking process right now at the Transportation Commission in November. And I'll go to that now. You know, locals can nominate projects, and at the November Transportation Commission, we will be you know, looking to our commissioners to add any of the nominations or the phase 1 projects to be ranked. Again, this is an informational tool to our commissioners. This isn't these are what's going to get funded and this is how we're going to build our program. Again, it's based off of the quality of life framework and better equipping our commissioners to understand how projects kind of mirror our UDOT mission and Utah's mission. So the nomination process just closed. Again, in November, we will be, talking with the commissioners on any of those that are going to be ranked. From there, in actually the December commission, me and my team will put together these lists, and then we'll, kind of show the Utah Transportation Commission what those lists look like in future conversations as we put together our program for funding. Because this is a commission tool, there is, information on history from the different meetings. If we do have some FAQs based off of putting together this process over the, several, I'm going to say years, but Ben can correct me if it's been longer or shorter than that. So yeah, this is our homepage for project prioritization and a bunch of content online, and that's kind of just the overview of that process.
Well, thank you. Any questions for Tiffany? We appreciate you taking the time to, be with us today and share that with us. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
we'll go on to the last of those, our second UDOT presentation, and Rob Stewart.
So Region 2 going in front of Region 1 feels weird order wise. Oh, no, it's good. This makes sense. So I'm Robert Stewart, UDOT Region 2 Director. Just for purposes of orientation, Region 2 is all of Tooele County, all of Salt Lake County, and all of Summit County. So I'm responsible for that strip kind of along the middle there. You're all right. While you get that booted up, I wanted to just give my shout out to WFRC and all of the different planning organizations for the unified plan. I find myself using that website and that map frequently as the one source that I can go to and find just about everything I need. The tool is incredibly useful. So is the other maps produced by WFRC. So thank you for all your work. Okay, so let's just get right into it. These are the capacity projects that are either underway or upcoming. The first one is a very important project for me for a couple of reasons. Number one is this is the I-80 I-215 reconstruction project where we added a lane and also reconstructed the oldest pavement that we had in Region 2. This represents the last project that I feel that I can blame COVID on. This was advertised, this was awarded January of 2021. And so I don't know if you remember that time period, everybody was sort of rolling out and thinking we were all good. We weren't all good. Prices have continued to go rampant, but that project is winding up right now. I think all of the pavement's been reconstructed. Traffic's in its final configuration. They're working on what I would consider touch-up sorts of work that should be completed this year. There may be some carry-on overwork into next spring, just on temperature-dependent activities. The other thing I wanted to say about this project that's important for me is this is the last project that I get to blame my predecessor for. So up until this, I could say, I don't know what Brian Adams was thinking. But now, since then, all of the rest of these are my fault. The second one is underway right now. It's on Redwood Road. It's the 6200 South CFI. This section of Redwood Road carries the highest number of vehicles for this type of road in the state. This competes with I-15 and even carries more traffic than I-15 in the St. George area. So incredibly busy portion of road. It's being widened right now, and in the intersection of 6200 South and Redwood is being converted to a to a full CFI. Right now, it's got two legs that have the
Acronym check.
Sorry, thank you, Andrew. Continuous flow interchange. This is where you see these periodically throughout our system where we take left turns, we get them out, we make them turn early before the signal, and then as you approach the signal, you're able to make a free left with the through movement. Does that make sense? That's a lot of lingo. All right. The other one that's just kind of kicking off right now is the 90th South project, SR 209 from Redwood to 7th West. That's a full reconstruct of the pavement and additional lanes. So it's going from a 5-lane section to a 7-lane section through that area. Bangerter Highway South interchanges. This is kind of, it kind of overlaps with 5, which is the other Bangerter Highway. So the South project is 2700 West interchange on Bangerter. It's the 134 South interchange on Bangerter and the 9800 South interchange on Bangerter. Those three intersections are being converted from intersections to full grade separation. Same thing with 47th. They're different projects, but they're sort of overlapped and combined. This will make Bangerter Highway a full freeway or a full grade separated facility from I-15 on the south end all the way to 47 or all the way to 41st South on Bangerter. The other one that's going to begin construction is the one-way, what we call the one-way frontage roads section on I-215. So this is southbound I-215 at 4700 South. We'll be creating the one-way frontage road system right there. For those of you that are familiar with the UDOT complex, it's right behind that. That will, 47th South itself is very congested. This will help get some of those vehicles off of 4700 South and to their destination quicker. Number 7 up there is SR 111. So this is kind of a unique project in that the original scope of this was to extend the Bacchus Highway, which is U111, sometimes Bacchus Highway, sometimes U111, sometimes SR 111, is to extend that to connect to 123rd South. So this project will extend 123rd South up to the intersection of where it would meet with U111, and U111 is being realigned to make it a straighter road out in this area. And we'll connect the Olympia Hills development, Daybreak developments out there, all with 123rd South. So number 8 is SR 36. This is out in Tooele. This is a southbound widening of SR 36 from Sunset to Stansbury Parkway. For those of you that travel this area, SR 36 is very, very congested. This is to help try to relieve some of that. Combined with that is number 9, which is the extension of the auxiliary lanes. So if you are headed northbound off of SR 36 right now, you currently have to merge into traffic or merge into I-80, and then it becomes its own exit for SR 201. That will create an auxiliary lane all the way from SR 201 to SR 36. And so those are kind of projects that are in the very near future, 24, 25. Then we get out to, this is I-15. The next one is I-15 northbound. So we completed the CD system, the collector distributor system, distributor system from 90th up to 215. This is the extension of that all the way down to Bangerter Highway, if that makes sense. That is going design build. That'll be the construction in 2026. After that, we have the continuation of the Bangerter Highway project to fully grade separate it. This is labeled as 41st to California Avenue. You see a price tag up there of 570. That's what we have budgeted right now. The current estimate is in the $1.5 billion range. Okay, so it says 41st to California. We are currently investigating the phasing of that to see what the logical use of that 570 million is. It likely will be to just continue northward, do 41st and 35th. And there also, we're looking at, we just got done with the environmental process on that. There's a lot of homeowners that we've said, hey, when Bangerter comes through, we plan to take your home. Those two interchanges represent the majority of those impacts. And so we're thinking that it makes sense to go 41st, 45th, because it's logical and it helps those homeowners out that may be impacted by the construction. Number 12 is Mountain View Corridor. This is, so right now in Region 3, Mountain View Corridor is been awarded the construction on that, and that's to do the Utah County portion up to Porter Rockwell. This project picks up from Porter Rockwell, takes it up to Old Bingham Highway. The thing that's notable about Old Bingham Highway is that is the separation between it's the separation of the places where we can build the full freeway section or the grade separated section without the transit component on 5600 West, if that makes sense. And the last one I have on here is I-15 northbound from I-215 to 6 South. I'll just say that this says widening and ramp improvements, like all things that are on the RTP. This really is just a project that illustrates a problem that needs to be solved. We don't have the environmental process done on this, so we have a problem that we know that we have a need there. We need to now get into the environmental process to know exactly what we're talking about in that area. Any questions?
Awesome.
Let me go forward one more. I just kind of give you a map representation of all of that. I think there's a pretty good distribution of projects in Region 2. We're really happy. The other thing that I liked about the stuff that Julie presented was this represents, what, 13 projects. Next year in Region 2, we have about more than 40 projects. So just to highlight for UDOT, this represents a huge dollar figure, but it's a very, very small representation of all the projects we have going out. Okay. Oh, these are some of these other notable projects. The one I've already mentioned in Utah County, there is the I-15 reconstruction project that I don't know if Brett will get into a little bit more. That's the one that spans Region 1, Region 2. We are going to be reconstructing, this isn't capacity adding, we're going to be reconstructing I-215 from SR 201 to North Temple. That pavement's in pretty poor shape. That'll be 2025. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. Yes, last but not least, Brett. Let's go Region 1.
Okay, so I'm Brett Slater, Region 1 Program Manager. Just quickly go through our capacity projects also. Okay. Okay, so Region 1 is Davis, Weaver County, Cache, Box Elder, Morgan. So I like what you did, putting just a list together. It's just all up there. So I'm putting little one-pagers together for each of our projects. So Robert actually talked about this project. This spans Region 1 and Region 2. We are in the middle of the EIS. They're in their public comment period. They should be wrapping up in the spring of 24. After that, then we go to the next phase, which would be design and construction. So we're not showing exactly what is that the EIS is proposing a lot more than what is currently allocated for that project. So it may be phased out. So that project spans from 600 South up to Farmington. This is the Shepherd Lane project. We bid this project out about 2 months ago. We only received one bidder, and it was extremely high. The bids came in high, so we pulled the bid back. We made some modifications to the bid, and we sent it back out. The bid opening should take place, I believe, November 28th. The difference in this bid is we're bidding the Park Lane pedestrian overpass as an alternative bid. So they're bidding on the Shepherd Lane project, and they also will give us a bid for Park Lane. But if we don't have funding for Shepherd, we'll move forward with the Shepherd portion, and then we'll work on getting funding for the Park Lane, depending on how the bids come in. But we should find out that here at the end of this month. Back on that project, a good portion of this project was actually built by the locals, North Shepherd and South Shepherd. is already constructed. I'll just point to down to this intersection. All this is already constructed there. This project is currently under construction. There's a 5600 South widening and I-15 interchange. It's a progressive design build project. It's programmed at 316 million. It's moving along pretty nicely. Construction will take place for the next 2 years on that project. We are currently in a reevaluation of the 1800 North interchange. The reevaluation should wrap up sometime next year. And then we are actually in design now of that project since it was a reevaluation. The 1800 North interchange will actually shift I-15 east, which will give separation from SR 126 or 1900 West. Give that proper separation so we have a little bit more capacity and storage there. Currently programmed at 90 million. It is short on funding. We'll be going back to the commission most likely in March and May to ask for additional funding on that project. A part of this project, it is separated, and at some point we'll probably combine it, is the 1800 North widening and reconstruct. This goes from I-15 down to SR 108. This will widen this road from a 2-lane to a 5-lane section. Included in this is an overpass over the UTA and Union Pacific Railroad.
Brett, how much of the property has been acquired for that already? Is it all?
Almost 85% of the property has been acquired for this structure. Yep. Next project is SR 108. This is the last segment of SR 108 that needs to be widened. We're currently going into construction of a section just south of this, of what's being shown on the map here. We'll also go into a reevaluation of the EIS next year. We'll design it, and for the 24-25, which will help us line up with our funding that's been allocated for this project, and go to construction in 26 and 27. Currently, program amount is 123. With almost everything, we're expecting some shortfall for this project. And this will widen SR 108 from 1800 North up to 4275 South in Roy. Next is the I-15 24th Street interchange. This has been on our books for quite some time. Originally, this was an atypical intersection. 24th Street is a half interchange. We were looking at making it a full interchange at its current location. With help with the designers and working with Ogden City, we were looking at shifting the interchange south and doing a single point urban interchange, a SPUI intersection at that location. Ogden City, this was their favorable option, and we are moving forward with that. EA, it should wrap up next year. We'll go into design the following 2 years, and then we'd go to construction in 2026. Current program amount is 96 million. The next large capacity project is the widening of US 89. I'm losing my voice. Sorry. This will reconstruct 7 miles of US 89. It will widen it from SR 126 down to 3600 South. A big part of this project will be adding shoulders. This is a heavily used bike route. This will actually greatly help and provide some safety for the people that utilize that, especially as the biking community. We're hoping to go to construction in 2024. Next one is I-84 and US 89 interchange. We are wrapping up an EA on this project. The EA should wrap up here pretty quick. Current funding on this project is 60 million. The project, as it's currently being looked at, is around a about a $600 million project. So we're looking at having to phase this and split this project up, most likely into 3 different phases. With the first one being the interchange on 89 and 84. This project will widen and reconstruct 89 from Harrison Boulevard. This includes a flyover from Harrison to 89. Includes a new flyovers over the Union Pacific Railroad and a new interchange. So next one is SR 77 from SR 193 to 1800 North. So this is the West Davis corridor. The West Davis corridor cleared this section as part of the environmental study, but it cleared it as a single lane from SR 193 up to 1800 North. New traffic patterns and the new traffic model shows that that is insufficient. We're going to go back out and reevaluate that to make that a 2-lane road. It's a divided highway in each direction. The reevaluation will begin next year. Current program out for the reevaluation is 20 million, and then we'll move after the reevaluation. We'll move into design and construction. Okay. Any questions for me?
And I probably should know this, but on the section from 6 South through Davis County, in the earlier discussions, there was a lot of potential expansion or width of the right-of-way. Is that still under consideration in the EIS process?
So Robert and then Tiffany's online, who actually is running that project. She probably could better answer that. Yes, there will be some right-of-way, but it is minimal compared to what they're adding to that section of road. Okay. A lot of that right-of-way, especially is when you get to each of the interchanges and the frontage roads and the tie-ins to the local communities. That's where a lot of that will be taking place.
Okay.
But most of that widening will be taking place east, so we're not impacting the rail line.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Guys, I have one question and one comment. I'll ask my question first, then I'll make my comment. My question is about the Utah Trail Network. We all know we're all really excited about the fact that the legislature has appropriated for the first time ongoing funding for active transportation. UDOT owned and operated and maintained paved trails, the backbone of trails across the state for people to use for transportation purposes. Julie mentioned this earlier, but the workshops that we're doing around the region are focused around the Utah Trail Network and Utah Trail Network and trails generally. My question for you guys in the regions, or Ben, or Tiffany, well, whoever, or Josh. Josh oversees the Utah Trail Network. Anyway, there's a lot of UDOT friends here. My question generally is and I know there's not a complete answer to this question yet, but how are you planning you just went through all of these projects. How are you planning to incorporate trail projects, Utah Trail Network projects, into the programs that you guys already have established? So it's a broad question, answer it however you will. Here's my comment while you're thinking about that. My comment is to just express appreciation. The collaboration between UDOT and WFRC and MAG, and this actually applies to UTA as well, is just exceptional. We all know each other because we're all working together. We build Utah's Unified Transportation Plan together. We're seeing these guys at our workshops. We're just doing so much work together. And for the members of Transcom, the local elected officials, I want to make sure that you know that when we do our work with UDOT and with UTA, we are in a sense representing you, right? That's our job, is to sort of have a foot in the transportation agency camp and a foot in the local camp. And so I just want you to know that that we've just got this great relationship and partnership with UDOT and UTA. We have common goals and objectives, and I just wanted to express appreciation for that for all of you. And that goes to Tiffany online also. Okay, so now to the question, if you would. Here comes Josh Van Jura. Okay.
Well, maybe I'll start off with, and then Josh can bail me out when I dig too deep of a hole here, but just trails and active transportation in general. I think that with the trail network is its own dedicated funding source, but we still have Tiffany went over the prioritization process. We still have the ability to provide funding for paved pedestrian and non-motorized active transportation projects that are more local, and there's a match requirement and nomination based. And then we are still, and I'll let Josh answer about some specifics on the trail network, but it is still very much a part of our intention and project process to include active transportation amenities or facilities as part of funded projects, whereas the trail network is focusing on kind of standalone projects for that. So we still fully intend to look for those opportunities, like on some of the past projects that maybe years ago wouldn't have been considered, but Mountain View Corridor or West Davis Corridor, having trails as part of those projects, which they may function and become part. They will function and become part of our active transportation network, but they wouldn't. Those would be built as part of those other projects rather than the standalone UTN. And then I'll let Josh add anything about UTN that might be great information.
Josh Van Jura, UDOT, Director of our Trails and Transit Group. Thanks for the opportunity. I love our trails program. Any chance I get to talk about it, it's always a good time. So to answer your question, or I believe the question you asked of how will we integrate UTN into our existing programs, I think it's important to think about how really a trail project is very similar to a road project. We're looking for ways to get different groups of people to their destinations safely, effectively, reliably. And UDOT has a long history of delivering projects from the very beginning when it was just, a glint in somebody's eye, bringing it up through the RTP process, eventually doing environmental funding, going into design and construction. And we very much hope to utilize that exact same process for the Utah Trail Network, that we've established this machine for transportation successes in the state of Utah. So that being said, really there's sort of a handoff point where the central office does a majority of the planning work. And then once it goes into environmental design and construction, that is where the region does it best. Obviously, working with our different community partners, advocacy groups, and the MPOs, like you said. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I mean, the basic answer is you're going to use a comparable process for the Utah Trail Network as you do for roadways, even though it's a somewhat different animal to build and maintain trails than it is for roads, but you're utilizing the basic mechanisms and it just gets woven into the programs.
Basically, much more succinctly than I did.
No, I'm just making sure I heard you. So thank you.
I just have a question for clarification for me to learn about it. Is the Utah Trail Network supposed to be dedicated ancillary pathways, or is that funding allowed to be, part of a road project as well?
So the goal is to use it as separate projects, right? And so if there's a trail associated with a concurrent roadway project, the funding for the trail and the road should be considered together. This funding really is identified for projects that either don't have any immediate or any at all adjacent roadway, because those are projects that would likely take a very long time or never get built. Does that answer your question?
All right, thank you. Okay, well, that brings us to other business. We have no meeting in December, no meeting in January. You're off the hook until February 15th, excuse me. At our last Transcom meeting, we made a change to the time that Transcom will be meeting. Oh, excuse me, not a council, at the WFRC, at our council meeting. Moving that meeting from 2 o'clock to 1:30 so that people can catch the train and get in and out of here if they choose to take that transit. As long as there's nobody that objects to it, we'd like to make that same change for this meeting as well. Does that work for everybody? Good, because I told Wayne that we're going to ask for objections and then tell you too bad, but no, sorry. Okay, well, we will make that change as well. Andrew, anything else for us on your end? Okay, that is brings us to the end of our meeting. So somebody make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion or second.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.